For the first time, in the Battle of the Ia Drang Valley, Americans fought the North Vietnamese face to face.
After infiltrating into the south, the 32nd and the 33rd North Vietnamese regiments had established a base area on the high ground of the Chu Pong Massif. On October 20th, 1965, the 33rd Regiment laid siege to an American Special Forces camp at Pleiku Campaign. After a siege that lasted 6 days, the South Vietnamese Army, backed by the U.S. Air Cavalry, secured that camp, and both NVA regiments withdrew to the Chu Pong. There, they meant to join with the newly arrived 66th Regiment before renewing their campaign. The American plan was to fly in the whole of the 1st Battalion of the 7th Cavalry to find the NVA regiments. It was the first time U.S. troops would face NVA regulars. The first step was to create an artillery fire support base near the Chu Pong at Landing Zone Falcon. Next, the lead elements of the 1st Battalion landed at LZ X-Ray. Right in front of them were nearly all the 66th and 33rd NVA regiments. When Company B pushed towards the spur of the Chu Pong, it was attacked immediately, and a platoon was encircled. Company A was also pinned down by fierce fire before the rest of the 1st Battalion was landed. A and B companies then launched attacks to relieve the encircled platoon, but were driven back. The following morning, the Americans, reinforced by another company, were hit by waves of NVA troops. Heavy fire support wreaked havoc on the attackers, and by now another American battalion was on its way overland. Conceding defeat, the shattered North Vietnamese regiments began to pull back towards the Ia Drang Valley in the safety of Cambodia. After the fight at LZ X-Ray, the Chu Pong was bombed by almost 100 B-52s, each unloading 17 tons of high explosives. For the next 10 days, the NVA regiments were pursued relentlessly by the Americans. But although the North Vietnamese were in retreat, they were still capable of hitting back. In one textbook ambush, mounted by a rearguard battalion of the 66th Regiment, 155 Americans were killed. For U.S. forces, it was the most costly day of the war so far. In the Battle of the Ia Drang Valley and the Pleiku operation, the 1st Cavalry Division lost 300 dead. But the NVA had suffered much worse. 1,300 North Vietnamese soldiers had been killed and many more wounded. It was a clear-cut victory for the Americans. 2 enemy regiments were all but smashed, and there was now little danger of South Vietnam being cut in two. The Ia Drang battle was a major boost for U.S. commanders. It seemed to prove their strategy was the right one. The enemy's big units could be made to stand and fight, and take heavy casualties in the process. If the Communists could be forced into more battles like Ia Drang, they would quickly suffer such losses they would have to abandon their whole campaign.
How many men who listen to me tonight have served their nation in other wars? How very many are not here to listen? The war in Vietnam is not like these other wars. Yet, finally, war is always the same. It is young men dying in the fullness of their promise. It is trying to kill a man that you do not even know well enough to hate.